Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jacky, and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I am super excited. Firstly, I want to say Merry Christmas. As we're recording this, it is not Christmas, so that feels really, really weird. But I know that as you're listening, it is Christmas, hopefully morning, and you're going to be diving into another episode with us. And today I've got something super special for all of you, because it's not going to be a normal episode, kind of, but not really, because I'm actually going to be interviewing my older sister. And we're going to be talking about things slightly differently because obviously we've got a lot of shared trauma from over the years. We've both been through very similar things, but also very, very different things. And we are very different people. So it's going to be really, really interesting to have this conversation and just share an even deeper kind of insight into the world that I come from. So do you want to start by saying hello to everyone and telling them who you are and where you are in the world?
Hi there, my name's Dominique. I am based in Southampton in the UK. I've lived here for nearly 20 years now. I moved here in 2005. I am an advanced critical care practitioner, so I work in intensive care under the Faculty of Intensive Care Medicine. But the thing I like to do outside of that is just kind of empower people to live their best lives and be able to sort of help themselves to make the best version of their lives possible.
Incredible. Okay, so this is something like I've been really looking forward to doing this episode and going through this and having this conversation with you. So where do you want to start? Like, what point in the journey do you want to take people to and talk to people about like your healing journey and where it started?
I think having listened to your podcast, because I listen to your podcast every week, so I'm very familiar with the type of guests that you have and the flow of it and the conversations that you have. And when I've been listening to it, I found that people seem to come at it from a position of they're living their life, they're going about their day to day, and their things accumulate and something happens, and eventually they get to a point where they're like, I can't do this anymore, and then they're like, something has to change. Um, for me, I kind of came at this whole thing from a little bit of a different place. And actually, to kind of explain that, I just need to take you back a bit. So this is going to go right back to when I was about 12 years old. So I work in medicine. I love medicine. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I've been interested in it my entire life. And when I was 12 years old, being the little freak that I am, I asked for an anatomy and physiology textbook for Christmas. So 12 years old, received that textbook, read it cover to cover, loved it, but developed the most profound respect for the human body. I think it's the most incredible machine that exists. I've never come across anything as fascinating, and I feel like the knowledge that exists in the world about the human body is infinite. You could spend a whole life studying in this, which I have done so far, and you still barely scratch the surface of what there is to know about it. But from that point, I got really interested in how the body works, what it does. And there was this part in the book which talks about how your body is always, your cells are being rebuilt all the time. So it takes X number of years for you to regrow all your bones or regrow all your hair or your skin or whatever. So actually the person that I am now is physically not the same person that I was however many years ago. But we build all of that stuff by what we put into our body and what we do to our body. So the way things we eat, the things we drink, the exercise we do, the environment we're in, all of these things literally build the body that you have. And I thought that was the most profound thing. I was like, so every single thing I put in my mouth, every single thing I expose my body to is literally going to be creating the body that I have. And that like really made an impact on me, and it changed the way that I lived my life, literally from that point. And around a similar time, a family member of ours had gotten involved with a health company, like a nutrition sort of company, and they had a type of eating plan. And that was when I started thinking about diets and how I ate and the things that I ate and how not all calories are created equal and all of these things. And they kind of all just compounded together. And I started exercising. I started running on the beach and doing exercise videos. Back in the day, we didn't go to gyms in South Africa, but and from that point, I've really just been doing all of those things. But what that's kind of meant for me is that going through life, I almost feel like I front loaded the system, because all of the things that people say that you should do to manage your mental health and to manage your anxiety and depression are all the things that I've been doing since I was 12, because of this respect that I had for my body. And it actually, I was 12 years old. Mental health wasn't a thing 20 years ago. Nobody's talked about it. It wasn't something that we were doing. But all the things that they recommend now to make yourself mentally strong and be well in your brain are things that I have been doing since I was about 12 years old. So actually, I almost front loaded the system. So I never had to get to the point where I needed to break to then start healing. So now, obviously, because humans are different and genetics are different, it's possible that I'm just the type of person who doesn't have anxiety or depression or mental health, like a propensity towards that. We will never know. But it's also possible that because I front loaded the system, I am less likely to be prone to those things. So yeah, that's kind of where I came at it.
I love that. And it's so interesting because when I listen to this and I think about us growing up and I think about my approach to our teenage years versus your approach to our teenage years, I was definitely the rebellious child. I was definitely the try lots of things and see how it goes. And I didn't really exercise. I danced. That was my form of exercise. I did dance religiously. And it's just so interesting because did you find that frustrating when we were growing up? Did you find that being my older sister, watching me go through those things and not treat my body in a way that was, overly great? Like, how did you find that going through that?
I think at the time I was quite self-involved in what I was doing. And everyone around me was doing those things. So actually, I felt like the weird one, not you. You actually fitted in quite well with what everybody else was doing. And I was the strange one that didn't want to go to parties and drink and smoke and try all these things. Um, I just wanted to sit and read my book, but everybody else was doing what you were doing. So actually, it didn't feel like you were doing the wrong thing. But I think what's very interesting about it is that we share half our genes. We are genetically half the same person. We had the same upbringing. We grew up in the same environment, same parents, and yet we are completely different. Like, we are chalk and cheese as far as how we approach things, deal with things. And like, that's the thing about healing. I think there is no one right answer. Everyone's got their own way that works for them, because actually, if you tried to do everything I did, you'd be miserable. It wouldn't work. And if I tried to do what you do, I'd be miserable. So actually, it's really important to get to know who you are yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as a 12-year-old with dyslexia, being given a textbook for Christmas would not have been the top of the priority list. So that's the first step where we separated in this movement. But I think that there's like, I know your life. I know all the things that we've been through, as a family, you separately, moving away, all of these big things. And there's been a lot of big defining moments as you've kind of gone through, and big things that you've had to deal with and you've had to go through, and things that you've helped me through. And I'm sure loads of your friends, and like, there's loads. You're quite a supportive person for the people who are like really close to you and are around you. And I guess, like, I always ask people, like, what did they have to embrace about themselves when that break happened? But obviously that never happened for you because you were, always this person. But you did say that you were very different from what everyone expected you to be. So what did you have to embrace as you went through those different phases of life, of you know, boyfriends moving to another country, you know, going into new jobs? Like, what have you had to embrace about yourself to make that transition?
I think when I first started, like as I was kind of coming out of my teenage years into my like early 20s, I was still quite a people pleaser. Obviously, I'm the oldest child. We had a lot of history with us where I was like helping you with when you were growing up. So I was always expected to be the responsible one, and it was very much about people pleasing. And it wasn't until you end up in situations where you think, actually, I am not happy. And actually being happy is more important than being liked. And actually, I don't need to be liked because I know who I am. And I can say no, and the people who are around me that respect my boundaries will be okay with that. And anybody who's not okay with that, they're not my people. Yeah. And it changes the way that the people that you accept into your life and the people that you choose to be around, because you really become much more focused on what is this doing for me rather than what am I doing for this other person. And it's about making sure that my needs are being met, my happiness is being maintained, my peace is being maintained, because that becomes really important to me. And I think I just came to this realization that time is so precious because, I mean, I see death pretty much every week. I see death all the time. And I will literally be standing verifying somebody's death. And these people who had plans tomorrow. And that will never happen now. So it's a very profound thing to know that actually your time is limited. And I think people don't realize how valuable their time is. And people, like, they'll go to work and they'll do a job and they'll think, okay, I earn, I don't know, £10 an hour, £20 an hour, whatever you earn an hour. And actually, you need to start thinking about that as far as your time in outside of work. So if I'm spending like 20 hours a week doing something that I don't want to do because I'm trying to people please, that is not a good use of my time. And it also means that I'm not able to put my time into things that are important to me, things that do make me happy. And I'm not able to give my time to the people that I care about and the people that matter to me. Because if you're saying yes to everything, you're gonna run out of time. There physically isn't enough time to say yes to everything. So I found that once I was able to stop people pleasing and get to know myself and be the really authentic version of myself, it lines everything up. Because when you're being authentic and you're doing the things that make you happy, you are doing things that align you with people who are doing those things. So you meet the right people and the people that are going to be your people. And the thing with like people pleasing, sometimes you'll end up with people around you that shouldn't be there. And that doesn't mean that they're bad people or that you're a bad person. It just means that they're not your people. And that's okay. Like there's billions of people in the world. You don't have to be for everybody. Like you can just be for your people, and that is fine. But I think by really getting to know myself, setting those boundaries, being very clear on what I want and what is going to make me happy, and making happiness my number one priority. That's the goal. It doesn't matter how you get there. It doesn't matter what job you have, where you live, what you do. It's just about being happy. That is the goal. That's why we're here. Like life is so short and time is so limited. Like don't waste your time.
Yeah, I massively, like, I always look back at living in the UK, and I know obviously, and again, this is, you know, something we're very different. Like you live in the UK, you've been there for 20 years, you're very happy with your life there, and you have built the systems around you, you've got all the things that you want. And I lived in the UK and I never really settled in. I never really enjoyed it. And it took me so long to get to that point of actually moving home and, you know, saying that actually this is where I want to be and this is where I'm happy and, you know, this is where I want to live. And it's so interesting because the amount of people who are really shocked when they find out that our dad is actually moving to the UK. And they're like, oh my gosh, you've just moved home and he's leaving. And they're like, well, you go back, like, because he's going. And I'm like, no, that's not the point. Like, I didn't leave the UK because he was here. And I left the UK knowing he was going to leave. I left the UK because I wasn't happy there and I'm happy here. So if he's going to go and be happy there, then that's brilliant. Like, I'm so pleased for him and, you know, so pleased for you being happy over there. But actually, it was never the right thing for me. And I think so many people are stuck on that idea of like, well, if everyone else is doing it, they should do it too. Or, you know, well, if you're going to be left here by yourself and everyone's going to leave, then you should go too. And I think there's a real kind of essence in that of just like, you have to live your life for yourself. You have to
Yeah.
do that thing for yourself. Like, you can't live it for other people or make decisions for other people, because it is a slippery slope to you being unhappy in your everyday life.
That's the thing. I think people don't always appreciate how much of your time is not spent with other people. So, for example, when I first moved here, I used to spend all year looking forward to the 2 weeks that I'd go home to see my family and friends. And I'd literally live 50 weeks of the year for the 2 weeks that I was in South Africa. Like, I'm saving my money, I'm scrimping, I'm not going out and enjoying myself. I'm doing all these things, just essentially waiting for a holiday. But the majority, 80% of my life is not being lived because I'm waiting for that 2 weeks. And it's the same with like, although when you're when I'm in South Africa, I'm able to see people. If I lived there, I wouldn't spend 24/7 with those people. I'd see them a couple of times a week, maybe, if that. And actually, am I going to sacrifice 90% of my life, as in 90% of what makes me happy, for the 10% that's nice to have when I'm on holiday? No, it doesn't make sense. So actually what you need to do is you need to build a life that you don't need to escape from, and a life where the day-to-day, you make the day-to-day, the mundane day-to-day things enjoyable, so that every day is happy, every day is fun and good and enjoyable. And then you can handle those days every now and again that aren't great. And it really gives you that space to handle the things that are then bad, because bad things happen in life and there's nothing we can do to stop them. But you can live a life that's like 90% amazing and have the space for the 10% of crap that comes with living. And actually, your majority of your life is then really happy.
Yeah, 100%. And so many people still don't grasp that concept. They still don't have that mentality of actually how do they make every day happy, rather than, you know, living for the holiday. Like, it's such a culturally accepted thing to live for your vacation, like live for the time that you get off. And, you know, oh, well, you hate work, it doesn't really matter because you're going to get your holiday. And
Yeah.
it's so detrimental to people's long-term happiness. So I think that is a really, really important thing for people to kind of listen to and hear. And
Yeah. And
I always
my approach to that has always been very logical. I'm a very logical person. I like science, I like facts, I like things very logical. And my approach is that there are 168 hours in a week, basically. About 60 of them you're going to be sleeping, about 40 you're going to be working, and that leaves around 70 left over. So the mattress you have, the job you have, and the person you're choosing to date or spend your life with and your time with, they are going to be the big key players. Those are going to be the big things that really shape a really big percentage of your life. So get a good mattress, get a job that you like or can tolerate and is not going to make you unhappy. Be with somebody that's going to be helpful to you and not harmful to you. And then think about this remaining 70 hours in the week and the things that you're going to build in that you're going to enjoy. And you don't have to wait for your birthday or for your holiday to do the things you like. Like, I live in the UK. I like paddleboarding. Now, you wouldn't really associate paddleboarding with the UK. People don't really associate it with beach type stuff. I am out on my paddleboard most weeks because I don't let the weather dictate what I do and how I live my life. So the only thing that there is in the world is wrong clothes, not wrong weather. So actually, get some layers on and get on the paddleboard. It doesn't matter that it's winter, and then it's beautiful in the summer, but you can actually do the things you like. You don't have to wait to be on holiday. So that's how I split up my weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And this next question, like, I think it will be probably we will have to discuss it in a slightly different way for your logical brain, because I always ask people this idea of like, was there a moment where they thought they couldn't make it? And I don't necessarily think that you would have such a dramatic response to life ever.
No.
Because it's just not who you are.
No.
But I know that there have been moments where it's been really hard. There have been moments where life hasn't been lining up in the way that you want, that we wanted, that, you know, was conducive to happy living.
Yeah.
And like, do you want to share some of those moments, and actually what did you do in those moments, and how did you overcome those moments?
Yeah, so I think the way that I approach life is, if I don't worry about something, I mean, I'm not a worrier at all. I don't really worry about anything. But if I've come across a problem, my approach to it is, can I do something about this? Can I change it? If I can't change it, then I don't worry about it, essentially. And I'm incredibly protective of my peace. That is the most important thing to me. And in a way, it almost makes me a bit selfish and a bit self-centered, because, for example, the fact that there is a war on the other side of the world, can I do anything about that? No. Is me worrying about it going to change it? No. Is worrying good for me? No. So actually, I'm not going to worry about that, because there's nothing I can do about it. And my worry doesn't fix it, but it does damage me. It's detrimental to my body and my well-being to be stressed and have those feelings. So actually, if there are things in my life that aren't right for me, I will change them, because I'm very, very strongly believe in the fact that we are not stuck. There's always a way out. There's always something that we can do. And I will start over as many times as it takes to get the life that is mine, that I want, that is happy. But sometimes in life, things happen that you have no control over. So like, for example, the death of a loved one. So obviously we lost like 5 family members in the space of a very short time. And that isn't something that I have no control over. And you still get the feelings and the hurt, and it's still painful, but it's something that's completely outside of my control. But actually what I found with that is, because of the way that I live my life and the toolkit that I've built about how to deal with things and how to make sure that I am healed and balanced and on an even kilter, I always think about this in terms of, you know, when you've got people who are super, super stressed, there's a lot going on, and something minuscule will happen, and they just lose it, absolutely lose it. And you always talk about that thing with the straw that broke the camel's back. So the way that I live my life, I am a strawless camel. There is no straw here, which means that when something hectic happens, like the loss of a loved one, I've got the space and the resilience to actually deal with it, because I don't have all of this other stuff waiting there for this one last thing to tip me over the edge. And that's something that I need that in my job, actually, because I'm exposed to trauma and emotional stuff in my job every day. Like, I see pretty traumatic death and traumatic things that happen to people. And if you're in intensive care, it's probably the worst day of your life. And your family are not having the greatest time either. So I am exposed to trauma pretty regularly. But because of the way that I live my life in a way that I don't have that stress as a foundation, I'm able to then be quite flexible and bendable to it. I can bend to it, stretch to it, and manage it. So although losing family members, like obviously the death of our aunt, is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, I was able to carry on because I didn't need to think about it. The toolkit just kicked in. Because I know I need to eat properly. I need to drink water. I need to sleep enough. I need to get up. I need to go to the gym. I need to exercise. I need to go outside. All of these things that I know that I need to do to keep my mental health good, things that I've been doing since I was 12 years old, means that when something happens, it's a habit. You just do it. You don't lose it. You don't fall into that cycle where it's becoming harmful. And you start to really recognize when you are being your own problem. Because I'm super busy. I'm like busy doing a master's, like I'm busy all the time. And sometimes I'll be like, I don't really have time to go to the gym, or I don't really have time to get out on my paddleboard. And actually I'm like, no, you're being an idiot. You do have time. You need to reprioritize. You need to recognize that this is important. Get out of your own way, because give it 2 or 3 days of not treating my body right, and I immediately feel I'm irritable, I'm restless, I'm not productive, I'm not getting stuff done. So actually, I'm just harming myself. So it adds absolutely no value. So you need to actually just have those habits that no matter how you feel, you just get up and do what you need to do, because actually you're going to make yourself feel better for it. It won't be something that makes you feel worse. I've never come out of the gym feeling worse than I went in. So
Yeah, so true, so true. And it's so interesting because obviously, again, we had very different ways of getting to this point of, I'm a much more stable human now than I was not, years ago. And I can remember having conversations with you about that whole straw that broke the camel's back. I would fly with the highest cortisol levels that my body could handle continuously all of the time. And you would continuously be saying to me, you need to get your cortisol levels down. You're too stressed out. This isn't good for you. And it was so hard in that moment to even comprehend what you were talking about. Like, it was just the way that life was. It was how things had to be in my mind. Like, I was chasing all of the things and, trying to hold everything together. And like, I had such a different way of looking at life. And it's so interesting, like looking back now and thinking about like the person I was and all of the advice that you've given me over the years in like actually, and I've spoken about this on the podcast before, like the whole idea of like dating myself. And I remember one of the very first things that you did for me when I was really struggling right at the beginning, like when I was first in the UK, was you wrote me this beautiful list of affirmations. And you were like, just read these for yourself in the mirror every day, like, make sure that you're doing this. And like, you'd written the most beautiful things. I still got them actually. And it was one of those things that like I had never even heard of this concept. Like, I didn't even know. And hilariously, mom's gonna listen to this and be like, Dom was the one who sent her on this path. Which will be so funny. But I'd never heard of affirmations. I'd never heard of like understanding all the hormones in your body and how like running would be such a good thing. Like, there were so many things that I didn't understand. And I would sometimes look at you and look at your life and be like, why can't I be so centered, like so chilled, so like logical about things? But at the same time, was never willing to do the work that you were doing, was never willing to actually, like you studied nutrition so that you could do it properly. Like, you don't do things by halves. It's never been something that you're good at, doing things by halves. And it's so interesting to kind of see, like, I remember being tiny and you being asked what you wanted to be when you grew up, and you said a doctor. Like, it's like one of my earliest memories of us as kids is like you knowing what you wanted to be. And then me being like, I want to be a dancer. I want to be like an astronaut. Like, I just had like a new thing every week. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And there was always this like calm, assured, like just knowing where you were going. And I know, like you said, like at 12, obviously it really compounded for you. And then it's like been compounding ever since. And you've kind of gone on this journey with, everything that you've studied, everything that you've read, like everything is just compounds this idea of who you are as a person. It's a very like amazing thing to watch. Like, so many people get waylaid. They are like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do, and then they end up doing something else, or they, and you've had setbacks on your path. Like, I remember when you were attempting to get into your medical, like actual like GP doctor's training, and that path didn't work. And again, like your outlook on all of those sorts of things. Like, do you mind talking about that? Like what your outlook was like when you were going through that? Because I think it's just such an interesting thing for people. And it's just such a good lesson again that I think is great to share.
Yeah, so I think my approach to things have always been that I don't see failing as a bad thing. Like every time I failed at something, I've learned stuff. And I think because I know who I am and I know that I trust myself completely. There's nothing I cannot do. And it doesn't matter if I fall off the bridge and tumble to the ground, it's fine because I'll be there for myself. I'll pick myself up. I'll be fine. Like bridges burnt, it doesn't matter. I can swim. Like it's fine. So I think that with having that outlook means that you are not scared to do things. You're not scared to take a risk, to take a chance, because if it doesn't work, like I will be fine at the end of the day. I will be okay. But when I first moved here, I'd done my schooling in South Africa. We don't do A levels. You have to have A levels to get into medicine, nursing. The university that I wanted to study at it's called a Russell Brand University, which means it's quite highly rated, but you had to have A levels, which I didn't have. So I thought, okay, no problem. Let's get some A levels, no worries. So found a course online, studied some A level, did some studying, signed up as a private candidate to write the exams. £3,000 later, 21 exams, and I failed every single one. I failed 21 exams because it turns out that there are exam boards in this country, and every exam board writes a different exam. And the place that I had studied with didn't have that like distinction. It was literally just, this is biology, this is chemistry, this is maths, this is what you need to learn. And I was so confused. I was like, when I was going through the course, I was getting like high marks, A's, and everything that I needed, because you have to score high marks to get into the courses that I was looking at. And I was like, what has happened here? And it wasn't, obviously, when the exam results came through, I spent a day crying, of course, but I was then like, okay, what happened here? And instead of looking at it and thinking, poor me, I'm £3,000 down. I've spent a year studying. I've written all these exams. Like I was taking time off work to do it. Like it was a very costly thing, time-wise and money-wise. And they didn't tell me what I was supposed to do. No, I didn't look at it properly. I jumped in. I didn't do my research. I didn't look at it properly. And it was entirely my own fault. So what I then did is looked at the process and thought, right, let's streamline this because obviously the college that I used were useless. Don't need them. Cut that out. Find the exam board that works around the corner here that I can actually sit the exams at. Ask them what exam boards they use. Buy those textbooks, teach that to myself, and then write the exams again next year, which is what I did. But that, again, it's another year of my time. It's another £2,000 for these 21 exams. It's another 2 weeks of work to actually write the exams. But I was then able to actually get the results I need, do the studying thing, and I've been able to then do my nursing training first, and now I'm doing my master's, working towards working for the Faculty of Intensive Care Medicine now. So getting to the place that I wanted to go. Now it's taken about 10 years to get there, but the thing is that if you like the journey, if you're enjoying what you're doing, it doesn't feel like a journey. Well, it doesn't feel like work, and the time is going to pass regardless. So people are always like, I can't start a new career because by the time I get settled in it, I'll be 50. But in 10 years' time, you're still going to be 50. But you might have a new career, and that would be great. So actually stop worrying about how old you're going to be when you do something, because age literally doesn't matter.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think it's such a good outlook on, again, that like just a different way of looking at the world compared to what most people think. And in your time of being in the UK, you've had, a number of different careers to support you to get to this point and get into nursing. And all of those have been stepping stones along the way and along the journey and moving you in the right direction. And I know that you will never stop studying. Like there's a PhD on the cards, probably 2 or 3 by the time you're done. And it's like, there's always this desire to develop yourself and just keep learning and keep reading and just keep expanding, which I think is so incredible. And I guess my question for you would be, like, what's your advice for people? And you can come at this from a very different place to most people that I speak to, because most people are coming at from a very kind of spiritual, this is what I did. Whereas yours, you've got actual qualifications around the nervous system. You've got actual qualifications around nutrition. You've got, you've worked in medicine for a very long time. Like, what are the basics that people can do to make their lives better?
I think the first thing that you need to do is get very used to challenging your brain. Your brain is essentially 3 kilos of meat sitting in a dark box hallucinating your life. Like, just because your brain creates a thought doesn't mean it's true and doesn't mean it's real. So your brain is incredibly biased, and it is basically created by what you feed it. As in, and I don't just mean the food that you eat, I mean what you expose it to. So your brain has this ability, it's basically called neuroplasticity, and it's how your brain forges neural pathways when you're learning a new skill. Now, you see this all the time. For example, when first time you started driving, it would have felt really tough. There would have been so many things to be thinking about, and you would have thought, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do this. And now you drive and you can do it half asleep because you have created that like neural pathway. It's similar with learning to read. Like, for example, our speech part of our brain and our reading part of our brain are not actually connected at birth. So when you are learning to read, you are forging a connection between those two things. And I see that when I work with the people I work with in my volunteering, teaching people to read. And when I was learning the Rubik's Cube, you actually can watch these pathways physically develop. And everything you expose your brain to, social media as well, the news, literally everything, is being filtered through your bias. Your bias exists by how you were raised, things your parents taught you, things you've learned along the way, associations you've made, and they can be absolute nonsense. And there's a very, very good professor. He's called Professor Daniel Kahneman, and he wrote a book called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. And it's basically the idea that we have two thinking processes, and it's an evolutionary thing. The first one is about quick decision making, as in it's safety stuff, it's emergency stuff. Like if you are in a jungle and you hear a bush rustle, run away rather than investigating, is it maybe not a tiger that wants to eat me? For a safety mechanism, we run away. That's quick thinking. Slow thinking is when you're actually being more critical and you're actually looking at a thought process and thinking, is that real? Is that actually how it is? Or have I gotten that wrong? And we all will have things we've been taught in our childhood. And we need to remember our parents are just humans with brains of their own, which are biased by all the things they've learned and been taught. Like, I'm sure everyone's had a parent tell them that if you sit too close to the TV screen, you're going to go blind, or you're going to get square eyes, or all the lies that we tell our kids to make them do what we want. But some people take the things that their parents tell them and take it through with them into their adult life. And if you start to actually question your brain and look at what it's telling you and saying, is that real? Can I check? Like, I can actually go and find the data. Like, you've got a cell phone in your pocket that has access to the entire world's worth of information. It's really easy to check. Literally any thought. If a thought comes into your brain saying this group of people are likely to be more criminal than others, literally just go and look it up. Like, it's right there. Or if you're thinking like an association my brain makes, if I see somebody driving along with a personalized number plate, I immediately think, oh, what a loser. No, I have friends who have personalized number plates. They're not losers at all. But this is just an association that my brain has made, which is obvious nonsense. But you need to actually challenge it and say, no, it's not real. So anytime your brain is telling you something and or it's saying to you, you can't do that, people won't accept you for this, or you won't be able to do that, you don't have the strength, you don't have the intelligence, you don't have whatever. Stop restricting yourself. Expect more for yourself. Like, just raise your standards, because I will not tolerate anything other than ludicrously happy. 95% of the time, ludicrous happiness. I'll accept a small 5% when things are out of my control and a bit shit. but the rest of the time it should be ludicrously happy. So like that's the sort of level that you want to aim for, and just don't listen to your brain because it's not always real. Some other things, I guess it's just about getting to know yourself, because everyone is different. Everyone has a different way that things are going to work for them, and things that they want, things that make them happy. And you need to learn how you rest, because rest is so important. We see it in exercise all the time. If you exercise, you have to rest to heal, to be stronger the next time. And as a human, you need to do the same thing. You need to know how you rest. So having that knowledge about yourself, because it will be different for everyone. Like, I am not a social person, and I do not find socializing to be restful, which means I'm very protective of my social energy. I only socialize with people that are important to me and that I like, because I know I don't have a lot of that energy to give out. So I won't really spend it on people that are just kind of acquaintances. Whereas other people find socializing to be super restful. So it's really about getting to know what works for you, what you find restful, doing those things. Like, and it doesn't have to be productive. It might be a case of you're like to lie on your phone and like play a game, or something that where you can just literally switch your brain off. Like, there's no right or wrong answer to this. Whatever works for you is fine. Read a book, watch TV, literally whatever. But just get to know what it is for you. And sometimes you have to try out different things to see what is restful, because what works for one person isn't always kind of going to work for everybody. So, yeah.
I love that. It's so incredible. And I think, like, again, all of these things are like, there's so much available to us. There's so much that we can learn about our brains, about our nervous systems, about the way that our bodies work, about the hormones that are pumping around, about, you know, the food that we feed ourselves. And I was listening to somebody talk the other day, and they were saying, you know, there are people in the world who are moaning about how terrible their lives are and how they have no energy and how nothing is working for them, and they're sipping on their like bottles of Coke and, you know, eating junk food, and they can't understand why their bodies aren't giving them all of the energy and all of this like vitality and life. And then you've got the people on the other side who are sipping on their water and eating their whole foods, and they have all of this energy, and they're like, you know, they look after their body, they feed their vessel. And I think it's exactly that, isn't it? Like, you've got to learn how to feed who you are in every essence. So not just the food you eat, not just the water that you drink, but as you said, like the sleep, the rest, like the things that make you happy, the like your, like, feed your soul, like feed every element about you. Because
Yeah.
if you're not able to do that, then you will always have that unhappiness. Like, you'll always, and I can think about like my own journey before I started running, before I started to actually like cut down on things like sugar. Like, I have a massive sugar addiction. I still do. If there's sugar in the house, I'm like just eating all of it. So I make the conscious choice not to have it in the house. Like, and then there are moments where I'm like, damn, I hate past me for not buying that slab of chocolate so that I could eat it now. But future me will be really, really happy that I didn't do that, and I didn't kind of go into that pattern. So I think it is just like knowing those patterns about yourself as well, and knowing when you're self-sabotaging and when you are, you know, not being the best version of yourself. As you said, like, you realize that, and then that made it so much easier to then become that best version of yourself. And I think everyone has to go on that journey at some point to really get to know themselves.
Also, be very aware of the fact that the world we live in, you're exposed to a lot of information, and not all the information is correct. So seeing somebody on social media telling you how to eat and what to drink, and who are these people? And this is called critical thinking, and you do it a lot in university. Like, for example, if I'm writing a paper about something and I've looked up a piece of evidence, I go and look who the author is, because I'm not going to take, if I like want advice about how to reprogram a ventilator, I'm probably not going to ask a plumber. But if I want advice on how to fix my plumbing, I'm going to ask a plumber and not an ICU consultant. Yes. So the people that you ask need to have the expertise in what you're looking for, because think about the area you work in, whatever that might be, and how complicated it is and how complex it is. And there'll be things that exist in it that are so obvious to you, but would be so mad to someone that didn't work in that industry. And then apply that to everything else. Everything in life is complicated. Everything you come across is complicated. So be very aware of where you're taking your information from. And just because somebody says it on social media doesn't mean it's real, or that you should do it, or that it's going to work for you. And I think as humans, we struggle with understanding numbers on the scale of the world. Like in the UK, there's about 68 million people that live here. So if you see a product and they're like 60 out of 70 people we asked thought this was grand and it removed all your wrinkles and you're going to look like a baby again, is that really relevant? Like in a population of 70 million, 70 people, probably not. It's not statistically relevant. So actually you need to really be questioning information that you're provided with. Who's giving it to you? What is their motivation? Are they trying to sell you something? Are they making money from it? And actually, maybe you need to look at getting your information from a safer sort of place. Just because that will sort of serve you well in life. We're not really designed to get the amount of information that we do. So being exposed to the number of people that we are on social media, it's evolutionary wise, we're not really evolved to do it. So there's this thing called Dunbar's number, which is back in the millennia ago, the communities used to be about 150 people. It was about the key number for people. So we're not really as a society, well, as individuals, designed to have the amount of information from the number of people that we get it from. So you need to actually protect your peace and be very mindful of who you are exposing your brain to. And social media algorithms are incredibly clever. So like sometimes somebody will send me a link to something and I look at it and I think, oh, I'm not going to click on that because it'll change my algorithm. Like my algorithm will start kicking out all sorts of strange things. Sometimes like a friend will send me something that's a bit more on the religious side, and suddenly all I'm getting is about how like God's gonna save my soul, like, and that's the theme of things, and it takes a while to like drag it back to the things that I like am interested in. So actually every time you click on something, every video you watch, everything you search on, so it's all connected. It all feeds an algorithm, which feeds what you then are provided with. And that doesn't matter what source that's from. It can be the news, it's Google, it's any form of social media, YouTube, whatever, Twitter, whatever it's called now. So you will, and it then sort of colors your perception of the world. And actually, the world is such a beautiful place and there's so much good in it. And actually, if you focus on the good and the amazing things that day-to-day people are doing in their day-to-day lives, just those small acts of random kindness that really make the world go round, actually your outlook becomes so much more positive, and it's just such an enjoyable place to live. Like we are so privileged to live in the world that we live in. And it's an amazing, beautiful place.
100%. I mean, I don't feel like there's anything else we could say that could wrap up this podcast more than that statement. So we will wrap it up there and say Merry Christmas to everyone and Happy New Year. We'll be back with you in the new year to bring you another amazing guest, which I'm very excited to share with everyone. But I just want to say a huge thank you to you for coming on and being our guest and sharing and, you know, speaking to me about this topic. Obviously, I know that you're a massive fan of the podcast and you listen to it and you support it so hugely, but actually having you on as a guest was really, really incredible for me. So thank you so much for being part of this journey.
Thank you. And I think your podcast is something that everyone should listen to. I literally tell everyone about it because every week I listen to it, I learn something new. I learn a new way to think about things, and the guests are really inspiring, and actually to be included in that group of people is, I feel like, is quite a privilege for me. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of the Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Diary of Discovery.